Working all right. So thanks, Sam and Nadia, for the invitation. Super happy to have joined. Oh gosh, it says bad network quality. Hopefully you can still hear me. Just a small correction. So I used to be a part of the open research team at Wellcome. I'm no longer working directly in that team, but we do a lot of work together. So it's really nice to sort of have history somewhere in the organization. Oh gosh. Yeah. So the research culture program at Wellcome, I'll start a bit over. We started having conversations about it in the building probably about 2 years ago. And the idea was that there's sort of all of these symptoms in the research ecosystem, one of them being pressure on people that might lead to behaviors of misrepresenting data or misconduct that people have been working on for quite a long time, but have never come through Wellcome as a specific program. And so this is kind of how the research culture program was born. And one of the main ideas was that we really focus on this idea of excellence as funders. And we want people to have really good ideas, but it's done at the cost of anything. And we'll look at the papers and say, oh, wow, you've published really well, but we don't really take into account how the research is done. So how the people are treated. Is it done ethically? I mean, to an extent, we look at if it's done ethically, but is it done rigorously and in a reproducible manner? And I think we very much, as funders, need to take care of that or take insight into that. And so I'll briefly go through some of the program, but then try to focus on ways that we're still trying to engage the community. You might have seen a report we produced in January of this year. God, that seems so long ago. And it was called What Researchers Think About the Culture They Work In. This started with an extensive evidence review, about 100 qualitative interviews. I didn't participate in these first two phases, but I heard that once people started talking during the qualitative interview, they couldn't stop talking, and then something like 80% of them ended up running massively over. And the big one that you might have seen was a quantitative survey we did where we had over 4,300 people finish a survey and sort of tell us about their experiences of research culture. I'm not going to go into the details of the report. I highly recommend you look at it if you haven't seen it. But there are some nice things that came out. Research cultures aren't all bad. So 84% are proud to work in the research environment, but only 30% feel secure in pursuing this career. There's some other things that came out that might lead to bad science, if you will. So people kept citing that poor research cultures are leading to unhealthy competition, bullying, harassment, and mental health issues. We can all agree that these symptoms might lead to bad science. Additionally, we saw that researchers' views on what effects research culture has on research quality, 25% of them said it has a negative effect on research quality, which is not great, in my opinion. It should be much, much lower than that. And of course, we have to have a quote from Jeremy. It's nice to see that he backs things like this. So he actually thought the results from the report were not great, and that this should be impetus for all of us to change, and that Wellcome is committed to playing its part in this change. We're also conscious that we're only one part of the system, so we're looking to how we can support other parts of the systems to change. But importantly, we're committed to our part. I'll go on now to talk about how we've been engaging with the research community through this. So my colleague Ben Bleasdale, who many of you have probably interacted with, has done all of this work, and it's absolutely wonderful. He wanted to throw what he called town halls, so where Wellcome goes out with an external facilitator to consult with, I think in each event it was about 60 to 100 participants, and sort of dig deeper into the results from our report, but importantly talk about what changes need to happen in those particular environments to move forward or fix some of the issues that we're seeing. Unfortunately, we only got through half of these before COVID-19 hit, and so we're looking forward to continuing the rest of them. Likely, well, the town halls are definitely going to be remote, but I think this is a really good way to get a larger amount of perspectives in any initiatives or solutions you want to bring forward. What we heard so far in about half the town halls was lots of stuff, but coherently people were talking about how teamwork can be poorly recognized by the assessment system. There's low visibility of early career researchers and professional surface staff, so like technicians. there needs to be genuine trust between funders and institutions. So, a clear case for this type of forum would be institutions that trust the funder won't just completely cut funding if you report misconduct. And we should have the trust between one another for those interactions to happen. And then massively, we heard that leadership skills are undervalued. But the positive of going and speaking to all these places is that you can hear really good practice between lots of different places. And I think one thing Wellcome does really well is people's convening power, or our convening power to get people to share this good practice. We'll be publishing a summary of these key themes in the future. Another way that we've been engaging that we just created a virtual kit for was this thing called cafe culture. So in the outset, it was a board game that you get sent to you with vouchers for brownies, or actual brownies came with it. And the idea is you take about 45 minutes or an hour with peer groups to talk about the results from the report, but importantly, talk about how you can seek practical solutions in your environment. We just released the kit online, and I've heard it's been working well. I tested it out once and I thought it worked quite well for the situation that we're in. And then importantly, the outputs of this are all going to an ideas forum that we created for the program. So I really like this. It takes the outputs from cafe culture, so people's voices are feeding directly into the program. You can comment on the existing ideas, you can vote to show support for the other ones, and it's one, really happy to see that people are sort of thinking on the same page as us at Wellcome, who, we're not working in research environments on the ground, so we can't really develop solutions ourselves, and two, that people agree with one another on particular issues. Other way we're engaging with the research community is providing a platform. So I think this is going to be an ongoing series of website profiles for a while for people that are advocating for good research cultures and sharing good practice with one another. One of the ideas behind this was that if there's visibility for people that are living really good research cultures in their own environments, then others can sort of inspire to do the same. Importantly, what are we aiming for? So this represents a word cloud from the quantitative survey. People were asked to fill in 3 words with how they felt about their own research culture, and then whether or not they viewed that word as positive or negative. So I'm not going to show you the negative ones because I'm an overly optimistic human being. But if we look at some of the positive words that people think a good research culture embodies, it's things like supportive, creative, secure, inclusive. None of these ideas are novel, I don't think. But we're taking sort of all of this consultation, all of these ideas of what a positive research culture is, and trying to build a vision for the whole sector so that everyone knows what the goalpost is, and then we can all agree on that. I think that could be a really powerful message. Importantly, what actions do we need to take as a funder? So as I said, we're still building the program, and I think it's important that we finish and undergo quite a lot of consultation before funders do things. We don't want to create perverse incentives, certainly, but we come at an interesting time for Wellcome where we're redoing our strategy as an organization. So this started as a science review that was led by Jim Smith, and his goal was to review the way we support science as an organization, and then it spurred into an entire organization-wide strategy. So not only how we support science, but how we support other parts of the portfolio, and to the point of how we even operate as an organization. So I can tell you a few things that have come out from the strategy review, but formal communications will be much later in the year. So it'll include a strong foundation of discovery research, which I think everyone is really happy about, and is probably where we have the greatest leverage with our culture program. And then it has a heightened focus on tackling a small number of urgent health challenges. And these will broadly cover mental health, infectious disease, and climate change. The most exciting thing for the culture program is that we've gotten to input and develop a lot of the outputs from the Wellcome Strategy Review, which means that research culture is actually being baked in to how we're going to operate as a funder in the future. So, you can think about how you're assessing applications through the lens of research culture, or how you're sort of even communicating applications to people. And so I think this is really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results of it. And as we're sort of developing, these processes with the Wellcome Strategy Review, what we're doing in the culture program is sort of taking it in 3 buckets. So things that will require, things that will reward, and things that will support. And I'm really trying to stray away from the require bucket as much as possible. We really think positive reinforcement is the way to go. So reward and support are the best ways to move towards good research cultures. But obviously, you're going to have people that are not going to behave properly. So require will be required eventually, but I don't think it should be right off the bat. I'm happy to take any questions.
Wonderful, thank you, Diego. That's a really lovely talk and overview. We do have a few questions come in. So what I'll do, I'll just prioritise the ones that have been upvoted. So we have quite a long question, so you can look at your own message board if you like, Diego. I'll just read this one out verbatim. So great talk, Diego, thanks. I agree that teamwork is often poorly recognised. I feel that one way in which this is still obvious is with collaborative research grant applications, where Wellcome, as other funders, still only permits one lead and usually wants very senior people. Are you planning to allow forms that would permit several co-leads, and also the showcasing of ECR who can contribute substantially towards the proposal?
That's a great question, and thanks for that. So I can't give you the official welcome line because technically we're not allowed to release that yet, but I can give you how I'm trying to influence this. I fully agree with you. I think we have a scheme about collaborative awards, but it still doesn't allow you to have co-leads in particular research groups, and then normally the person is the most senior person in the group. I think having early career researchers and people who are developing their research identity to be put on grant applications is essential if you want to incentivize this.
Wonderful. We have another question that's got a lot of attention, which was, should we not ditch the term excellence altogether? I'm never quite sure what it means and is mostly used as shortcut for doing well in rankings.
Yes, we should ditch the word excellence. I mean, we've worked really hard to get it out of lots of documents in the organization. There's an interesting exercise going on right now with an affiliate of Wellcome, so it's called the Research on Research Institute, and it's a consortium of about 14 global funders or so, and one of their kickoff projects is trying to dive deeper into this idea of what is excellence mean through the lens of a funder, and I was really happy to hear those conversations start with, we should probably just ditch excellence altogether and be much more focused about what we mean. So when we say excellent, do we mean rigorous, reproducible, things like that.
Great. I have a sort of pre-prepared question for you as well. So this might be seen as a softball question, but I think it's quite a pointed one nonetheless. So Wellcome doesn't have a great history with whistleblowing. How can we know that you have any credibility in this space? I think everybody sort of wants to know exactly how do you handle and protect people that do want to speak up, because it's a very thorny and very complicated issue.
It's a super complicated issue, and thanks for that one. So this speaks to how we've heard quite a lot. We need to build trust between institutions and funders. I can think of a number of cases that the speak up policy at an institution that we fund was not used properly and then not supported with the organization because people are uncomfortable about these kinds of issues. I think we have to be a lot more active in our goals and our ideals and what we expect, but also with those expectations should come support.
Absolutely. I mean, the sort of hard line is that you just remove the funding and like you sort of visit on people exemplary punishment. I mean, there's sort of obvious problems to that, but what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think there's things that came out of the report that are non-negotiable, right? So, you know, bullying and harassment, non-negotiable. If you're a repeat offender for these types of things, you should not have your funding. But then you run into these, you know, interesting power dynamics where people don't want to speak up about their environment because they're worried it's going to hurt their career. So how do you truly create these safe spaces where people feel like they can? And then I think importantly, you need to, I wouldn't say necessarily define it because you don't want to define people's experiences, but come up with processes that an independent party might review that are able to assess the situation appropriately.
Right, so we have a few minutes left. So there's a couple of questions coming in. So the first one is, will Wellcome be acknowledging the work of community and network coordinators as culture creators and change drivers as part of this new strategy to focus on culture?
I would love that. I think one of the things that's coming really strongly out of our work in the culture program at Wellcome is, I mentioned before, the convening power for how we can bring different communities and networks together. And I can't see a way going forward without acknowledging the work that's already done and tapping into it and supporting it.
Great, that's great to hear. And then we have one from Marion who says, bullying and harassment is rarely reported properly. How will Wellcome ensure there is not a bullying and harassment? As you said, it would not be tolerated. So I guess this picks up on whistleblowers, but it's sort of a pernicious and sometimes covert thing with bullying or harassment. It's not so obvious. It can just be low-level stuff to, you know, being a demanding supervisor, and, you know, given that it's sort of generally standard, what ways are Wellcome sort of safeguarding people that from bullying and harassment in whatever form it might take?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's going to be a long road, right? There's people who actually don't think funders have a real responsibility for this. I fundamentally agree with that. If we want, you know, if the goal is to get quote unquote very good research or fundamentally health changing and benefiting research, you need to make sure the environments are good enough for this to happen and actually accelerate this to happen. I think my personal take is we need to come up with like proper guidelines and support for those guidelines and like support mechanisms for people. This could be things like, you know, active bystander training or like guardian network type things of support in institutions. But fundamentally, I think we need to change how we reward particular people that are running groups to dissuade, you know, people that run groups in a poor way from actually running them or getting our money.
Wonderful. So we're just the last few minutes now. So I believe Patricia is waiting in the wings. I'll just ask one last question. What are the practical things that you think research groups should be doing to support good science?
Oh, I think I'm unmuted now. Yeah, there's a whole list of things. So I'm not sure if anyone has seen recently the eLife ambassadors put together a sort of guidebook for a code of conduct for creating an inclusive environment. I think that is probably the one thing that research groups can do that's like a tangible action in the current state is like actually have a code of conduct for how you work. This makes conversations about workload or work ethic or your expectations for data wrangling and sharing upfront, and then that way, when things get uncomfortable, maybe the conversation's a little bit easier to happen. But there is that upfront cost of saying, you know, we need to create this document or this way of working together in a formal way.
Wonderful, great. So we have a flood of questions coming in. So these will all be saved up, and we will relay them back to Diego later on in the sort of Q&A with everybody at the roundtable. So stay tuned for that.